Now for the GitHub part, you want to go to github.com/sign up. Fill out that form there, and once you've created an account, you'll see your dashboard in GitHub. Click on the left green button called Create Repository. You'll be creating your first project so that we can connect this to Visual Studio. So we're going to use the Python projects repository name, whatever you use. You just want to make it the same across the board. You see the owner / and then field where you can copy and paste in your project repository name. You might want to put a description in there. And this is where you can also choose to leave it public or change it to private, depending on the collaboration and privacy you would like. If you're looking to be able to share your portfolio with the whole world, then you'll leave it public, being careful of what you put in it, of course. But if you don't want anyone to see it but those who you have explicitly allowed, you'll choose the private option. At this stage, I'm just going to go ahead and leave alone the README file, git ignore, choose a license, and go straight to clicking Create Repository. So for connecting your Visual Studio Code IDE, Integrated Development Environment, with your source code repository in GitHub, this final piece of Python, VSCode, Git, and GitHub, you can grab that URL there that ends in .git in the quick setup box there by copying it with the copy icon on the far right or highlighting it and copying it. Now in your Visual Studio Code environment there in the terminal, you want to type git remote add origin, space between each one of those words as you can see on the screen, and paste that URL that you just copied there after origin space. After hitting enter, go ahead and type git space push -u origin main. It will have you go through this authentication process when you're doing this initial setup process. And you can see you will need to choose to authorize the Git ecosystem, the green button on the right, to allow the appropriate access to all of the pieces. You'll see that authentication succeeded screen, and now you want to go back into your terminal in your Python projects repository in VS Code, and you should see the enumeration of the objects, the counting, the writing, these pieces as it completed that process to enable this connection to main. Now when you then go back to your GitHub dashboard, click on the code navigation on the left side of the page, as it is for me, you'll see your file that you created in VS Code now also lives in GitHub. You see the repository name on the top and the file name. So let's take a look at this in action a little bit more. Edit your hello file, your hello.py script, editing the text inside your print command to print it to the console. You can see I'm just typing updated hello Python message there at the top. Now I'm going to go through in order to update this file in GitHub. I'm going to do the same thing as if it was the first time I was pushing this to GitHub. So I'll say git add and then the name of my script, my file, which in this case is hello.py. The Python file extension .py. After hitting enter on that, seeing the blue dot on the left showing it's successful, I'll perform the git commit command with my comment of what am I committing? What am I adding to the repository? Now at this stage, you can see there is a red dot, and because for me, there were points in the setup process when my Windows security features needed me to explicitly allow this to go into the folder structure. In this case, it's because of it being stored through OneDrive and going through this process. You may or may not experience this. I've done this on a variety of computers at different times, and I didn't have this issue in the past. But it was quick and easy to fix. Now do notice the M next to the hello.py. In this VS Code Get integration, there are these short status codes to indicate file states. The im specifically comes from Git's own short status codes. You do have the ability. You could type git space status space dash dash short into your VS Code terminal. In that, you'd see symbols like this im. So this im stands for modified. These are unstaged changes. But im could also have an invisible space after it that you really can't even see, and that stands for modified and already staged. Now, if there was an MM, it might mean changed and staged once, but modified again after. So at different points, you might see these different status codes. A means newly added and staged. 2 question marks may show with untracked file as a status. You won't see it say untracked file or any of these explanations. You'll just see that status code. Now, when I say staged, what that means is that the file has been added to the Git staging area, which is a kind of holding zone where Git tracks exactly what changes you intend to commit. Think of it as selecting specific files and even specific changes within files that you're preparing to include in your next commit. Until a file is staged with git add, Git knows it's been modified, but it won't include it in the next commit. Once it's staged, Git snapshots the file in that exact state, and that's what gets committed when you run git commit. So modified but not staged means Git sees the change but won't commit it yet. Staged means Git will include it in the next commit. And when I say commit, that means I'm telling Git to take a snapshot of everything that's currently staged, all the files and changes I've explicitly added, and save it to the repository's history. A commit is like a checkpoint. It includes the exact state of the staged files, a unique commit ID, a SHA-1 hash, for example, a commit message that explains what was done, and metadata, such as author, timestamp, and parent commits. Once committed, those changes become part of the project's permanent history. We can go back to that commit, compare changes, version history, across commits, or even revert the repository, which will often say repo, to that exact point. So staging git add is like choosing what to include, and committing git commit is the act of officially recording it in the repo's timeline. And then we still have to officially do that git push. Committing saves those changes locally, but it doesn't share them with others or put that in the central shared repository until you push. So when you run git push, you're telling Git to transfer that local commit to your remote GitHub repository. And that is what allows collaborators, people working with you, or people who are using your code or viewing it, that's what allows those collaborators to pull those changes and stay in sync. So if you have a team of software developers, everybody wants to stay in sync so that they have the latest code, so that they can know that they're working with an accurate copy and editing that instead of something that had been changed before. Without a push, the commit stays local and nobody else has access to it. So you have to push it to the repository, push it to the remote repository, the collaboration space, in order for the whole team to participate. So git add, first step, stage changes. Git commit, second step, record that snapshot locally. Git push, third, final step, share the snapshot with everyone else via that remote repository. Now returning, we're doing the commit, and this is where we are, of course, putting the message in, and then we finalize it with our git push. And you can see that's successful. So whenever you have something that blocks you, you handle the block, and then you just start back again with the git add, then the commit, and then the push. Now return to your GitHub code in the browser, and you might need to refresh your browser. But once you do, now you can see you have that updated message that you put. Updated hello.py file is what I put in the message for the commit. And there you can see that has traveled into the GitHub. Now at this stage in the setup, let's go ahead and add our README file. Notice the MD extension after README.md. That tells you it's a Markdown file. README is conventionally used to introduce and document a project, so you can see it on your GitHub. Markdown is that lightweight markup language that you're using for your README file, .md being the file extension. And when you're using GitHub, so that's the first file people will see when they visit a repository. You want to use it to explain what the project is, how to install and use things, any dependencies, how to contribute, what the licensing rules are, and so on. Whatever's important that people need to know when they're viewing your code or pulling your code to use. Markdown uses the hash symbols to define heading levels. So if you just have one hash or number symbol, that's for H1. That's your largest heading, like a main title. If you have two number symbols or hashtags, that's your H2, your second level heading, section heading. And that goes on to 3, 4, 5, and up to heading 6, H6. Other basic Markdown things you can do is put a double asterisk on both sides of a word or phrase, and that is telling Markdown this is bold. This is what I want to be bold text. A single asterisk is just saying you want that to be italic. And that is when you put the asterisk, also the single asterisk, on the front and the end. You can also make lists using the dash, asterisk, or plus symbol, like a bullet point list basically. You can do ordered using numbers, 1 dot, 2 dot, same as you would if you were just basically typing in Microsoft Word. If you want to put a link in, like you want to put in your README file that they need to link, they can click this link to get to another page that has more information or related information. You would want to put the text, like click this link, but you want to be more explanatory than that. But click this link, those words would first go into brackets in the front, and then immediately after, no space needed, you'd put your open parentheses, the actual URL, and the close parentheses to get your link into your Markdown file. So this is all we're doing with the README file, is we are including basically a page of content or text right at the front of your GitHub repository to provide instructions. So in your Visual Studio Code, you can see I had another error, which was again a security issue I had to resolve to explicitly allow this to write to that folder. But after this initial setup, you shouldn't have that issue in the future unless you're changing where you're putting things, if you even have it at all. So you can actually create this file that will live on your code page in your GitHub dashboard by typing echo, ECHO, space, put a hashtag and a space, and then your repository name, the greater than symbol, and the name of the file, readme.md, as you can see on the screen. And you don't actually have to do it this way. You could have included one before or create it in GitHub directly. Now, since we're doing this from Visual Studio Code, we'll go ahead and click Git space add space readme.md. We're just doing the normal process of staging here. Git add and the file name and extension. Then we'll run our commit to commit the changes locally. Once that's successful, we'll do our git push to send it on to GitHub and take a look, refresh GitHub, and see right there, now the hashtag space Python projects, that was just Markdown code. I was writing in a file, as you can see on the screen, in H1 main header text, just simply the words Python projects. The actual file name is README, and it's that readme.md Markdown file. So now I can actually edit this from inside of GitHub. And you can see I'm clicking on that little edit pencil icon there, and I can just type anything in here. Just typing more text, and then I can say here, commit changes, and I can put a description here. So I'm working directly in GitHub here and connecting directly to the main branch of my repository. and I can see the changes. I can see and notice that the one that I did directly in GitHub says verified here in GitHub. So we can get in and paste various pieces and commit the changes as many times as you want directly in GitHub. But in a little bit, we will have to then sync things back up, because when we go to commit a different file in Visual Studio Code, the local Git repository will say, wait a second, everything that's in your GitHub remote repository does not match everything that you have on your local repository. So you'll see that in just a minute. So anytime you make a change, we have to get these two locations to sync up together so that everything is uniform. And the latest version is the latest version, whether you're local or remote. But you can see, just play around with your screen, click on the commits, take a look, get comfortable looking at these pieces here.